Mustache Tales.
Yeah!
Hello, it's J. Chandrasekhar and Hayes MacArthur, and we're here with a new episode of Mustache Tales. Just going to be us today. Could have gotten a guest, decided not to. I just I said to Hayes, we should talk about a couple things because, the reason we do this is because we think we're pretty good at conversation.
When you texted me we should talk about a couple things, it reminded me of like when you were dating someone and they, out of the blue, like you talk to them all the time, but then they say, hey, we got to talk about a couple things. What do you want to talk about? Something going on with you? How's your health? You're like, no, I just want to do just a podcast of you and I. I go, okay, fine.
Well, yeah, you're right. There's no big sort of, hey, we need to talk conversation at all. Because I think I've never done that with a guy that I can think of. No, I haven't.
No, it'd be totally to text a guy and be like, hey, man, can we just clear the air about some stuff?
Awkward. Okay. So I guess I'm going to do the story today.
So it's just us.
Just us. And I have some things I want to bring up, but whatever. So here's I'll give you a choice. Which story you want to hear? The invention of Das Boot from Beerfest. How we invented that. Or the story of me as a high school narc.
I want to hear both of them. I think we should go with the Beerfest one, right. And then we'll harken back to the Narc one, because I think I know pieces of the Narc one, but I want to hear the whole thing.
Yeah, I mean, I can.
Where did Das Boot come from?
So, me, Steve Lemmy, and Eric Stolhinsky were waiters at an American bistro they wrote on the menu. It was called, I worked there for 2 years. It was called, I don't know what it was called. It was on 92nd and Madison, Busby's. And we were about 23. So, at one point at Busby's, there were 6 waiter slots, and 3 of my fraternity brothers were in those slots, and then me, Stolhansky, and Lemmy, also fraternity brothers. So 6 of us were all the waiters sometimes, and we would just, the table would order 2 vodka sodas, and we'd order 3, and we'd be just getting blasted. But whatever. And the cook was a guy named Dave. He was a short guy. He was like even shorter than Lemmy. He, I hit that guy. I hit Lemmy whenever I can, even whether he's there or not.
Yeah.
But this guy was a classic chef, the way you see it on TV, where they yell at you a lot, and like constantly yelling at you, and you're like, this feels like a gag or a bit or what you think you're supposed to do. But whatever, this guy would yell at us, and we're like, all right. But he was also nice. He was trying to be a tough guy. And so one day after our shift, we each had about $130 in our pocket in tips, and we go to this bar called Richter's, which was 2 blocks away. It was on 93rd and 3rd, and it was kind of a Colgate bar or whatever. And we go in there, and that's what we did. We would make the money and then drink the money. And so we're now in this bar getting hammered, and Dave, the chef, has decided to come with us. And we're like, all right, I'm going to let you hang around, you little fucking bastard. And we're getting drunk or whatever, and we see and we're like peak power drinkers at this point. We're like proud of how good of drinkers we are. And we see 2 glass boots are on these little sort of stands over the cash register. And Dave the chef is like, you guys think you guys are real fast chuggers, huh? And we're like, fuck yeah. And he goes, I'll bet you, pick the fastest one of the 3 of you, and I'll bet you I can out-chug you. And I'm like, what? Are you out of your mind? And like in chugging, you're only as fast as you are. So I've gone against Kevin Heffernan probably 300 times, and I'm 0-300. But I've gone against Lemmy and Stolhansky 300 times, and I'm 300-0. And Soder, I mean, I don't know if anybody's ever lost to Soder. Nobody has. Nobody on the planet. But anyway, so I'm like, okay, I'm going to be the guy. I'm going to chug against you. And he goes, let's put some money on it. He goes, whatever you guys made today, put it on the bar. That's the bet. And I'm like, oh, okay. I mean, that's going to cost you $390, but okay. So we put 3 stacks of whatever, 130 each on the bar. We get these things down, and we fill them up with, I think it was like probably 2 pints, frankly. Okay, it was a lot. It was a lot of chugging. And he goes, one rule: you cannot spill a drop. And I'm like, why would I spill a drop? So we go, and we're just, and I'm kicking his ass like you can't believe.
Wait, I assume it's a lager, right? Yeah. Like it's not a heavy beer. It's like a Coors.
Bud Light. And so I am kicking this dude's ass. I mean, really kicking his ass. Like there's no fucking chance he's gonna win. But at the very end, when I'm about to fucking collect my victory, a bubble forms and explodes into my face. And I get doused. And I'm like, oh. And Stolhansky and Lemmy are like, what happened? And we see this guy catch up and he goes like this. Whoop. And he turns the boot. His bubble dissipates. And he just drinks it down like a little lamb at his mama's teat. And then he took all our money. And I was like, and then he left. And I'm like, you motherfucking chef. Okay, chef. And that was it. And the great thing of, I mean, I don't know if it's a great thing, but the thing about our being like a group of people who are truly friends and hang out and then also write jokes is that we're constantly using these things from real life in our movies. And eventually, like we were making Beer Fest, we're like, hey, let's do that thing where the chef fucked us over with the boot, and that's how we invented Das Boot. Yeah.
It's like method writing, right? Like we've told that story before when stuff comes up and you're hanging out and then it ends up. And how fun is that? To have anything that comes up with your group of friends be potential material. And how much better does it make you feel about your drinking problem too when you get to generate material?
It's a good point.
From that stuff.
Because you feel like, I should probably write this off. I mean, it's,
it's all in.
Steve Lemmy and I wrote another joke that was in Puddle Cruiser in that same bar. This was the same era, and we were both single, and we would go into the bar, and all these other schools, like it was kind of a Colgate bar, but all these other schools, like younger Colgate chicks would come, and Lemmy and I would duel it out, and then at the end of the night, like, if he got up, I'd insult him, and if I got up, he'd insult me. And then at the end of the night, we were always alone together. And we're like, God damn, nobody got her. And it would happen with Vassar Girls and all these other girls. And we eventually, we were insulting each other so much that the girl was like, gross. What's wrong with these guys? And we had to call a truce. And we had to almost like claim the girl. And then only that guy could hit on her. And we did that. But when we put it into the movie Puddle Cruiser, it's a scene with Kevin and Paul, and they're both hitting on the same woman. And Kevin goes to he's doing well with this girl, and then he goes to the bathroom, and Paul swoops in and goes, all right, you and Garbage Dick, huh? Sweet. And she's like, Garbage Dick? And he goes, oh, yeah, that's just a nickname. I mean, it was just like a medical thing that happened a little while ago. I mean, that's a nickname. It's all whatever, just for guys, just for fun. And so we put that in the movie, and I'm like, God, that's exactly what you're talking about.
Garbage Dick was the way of him blocking you.
Yeah.
After the truce was called.
No, this never actually happened. This was the kind of insult we would try. But in the movie, he says, you and Garbage Dick. In the movie. Yeah, that's right.
Yeah, I never. I don't think. I think with hanging out with your friends as much as you did, and if you saw someone at a bar or you both like the same person, most people just one would back off and allow space. But were you guys being competitive? You'd do foot races outside of bars. You'd chug against each other. You'd go after the same woman. So a lot of it was super
Well,
competitive.
we were in that bar, you know, 5 nights a week, and then we were in some other bar the other 2 nights, and it 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 just felt. I mean, naturally, it was the same girl that we were both going after. I mean, it just felt normal. I mean, I understood why he liked her. He understood why I liked her. You know, what are you gonna do?
We had a worse one that now I tell with a little bit of shame. But we used to do a kissing contest. We'd be in a college type bar and we'd go up and I had a friend with me. I say, listen, this guy is my best friend in the whole world. We get along. We agree on everything. There's one thing that we've been fighting about since we were in 7th grade, and he thinks that he's a better kisser than I am. Can you help us settle this? Like it's just so. It's like when you're just doing everything you can to get somebody's attention, just spinning plates. And when it worked, it was so dumb and fun. It was great. Because you'd both be kissing the same girl.
And it did work occasionally, right?
Oh yeah, like and you'd be on the ground laughing the whole time, and people would be looking over. What is going on?
That's nice.
Dragging people into
that's nice.
The just absurdity.
Okay. I guess that's good.
So that felt, yeah. I mean that, and then the story of the narc. I think one time I was telling a story on one of our shows about getting kicked out of college, and then you might have alluded a little bit to how you narked or were considered a narc at school, and then they let you off because didn't you flip the script on them somehow?
Yeah, I mean, okay, I'll tell this one too, I guess. So I was, I started drinking when I was in 5th grade, at 10. And, yeah.
That's young, dude.
It's young, but you get, yeah, I mean, this is 70s suburbs, Chicago. I don't know what to tell you.
Were you taking it out of the house?
Yeah, we took a tennis pitcher, a yellow one, filled it with ice, and put a little bit of each alcohol behind my parents' bar, and mixed it up. And so it was straight mixture of everything. And then we walked around the neighborhood and just chugged it, drank it,
right?
And I drank the most, for sure. I don't know to what degree psychologically being the Indian kid proving that I was fun and hip had to do with it, because I was fun and hip. But I think it did affect why I drank the most. In any case, they dropped me off on my doorstep, rang the doorbell, and then I threw up all night long. I called my mother a fucking bitch. I didn't really think that she was. I did that multiple times, apparently. And the next day, they took me out to dinner, and there was a glass of red wine at the next table, and I was like I couldn't even look at it. And so I didn't drink again until 8th grade. And then once I started 8th grade, that was it. But I was a drinker in 8th grade for sure. Like, I was hip. I was cool. I was like the coolest. I was among, if not the coolest guy in my grade. I could have been the coolest guy in my grade. I might be. Like, I'm not saying that to brag because I'm an 8th grader. I'm saying that to give you context, it's possible that I was, right? And so now I go to high school, freshman year, and in a boarding school, and I'm not sure I want to go to a boarding school, Lake Forest Academy. And my parents are like, "You're gonna love it." They went to boarding schools when they were 10. They're like, "It's awesome, it's fun, it's great." They're British boarding schools in India. And I'm like, okay, I'll go. And I end up being put in the minority dorm. And so everybody in that dorm is some kind of minority, except for one. There's a Greek guy in there. I don't know. I don't think he was much of a minority. Anyway, he didn't last long, thanks to me. Anyway, so this my roommate is a guy named Shingo Suzuki, and he might have been part of the Suzuki family. I don't really know, but he had a brother named Matsu, I think, older brother. And no, yes, that's right. Yeah, that's right. Okay, no, sorry, he didn't have an older brother. Anyway, whatever. So Shingo Suzuki is a Japanese kid from, like, literally from Japan, and he's an exchange student, and he's my roommate, and I'm supposed to, make him feel better, right? Make him welcome him. But I'm like, what the fuck am I doing in the minority dorm? The fuck is this? I'm the cool guy from 8th grade. I've been drinking. I watch, these John Hughes movies. You're sticking me in the fucking, what am I, long duck dong? I mean, what the fuck? So I'm a little pissed off. And I don't want to deal with this fucking guy. And he's just, all he is, this nice guy speaks Japanese. And I end up like locking the door one afternoon on a Saturday to jack off. And two guys from down the hall smell it out. They sniff it out. And so they're next to the door. They're like, you jacking off in there? And I'm like, no. Are you jacking off in there? I'm like, no. I'm like, oh my God, my whole life is over if I'm busted jacking off. But then I wander out later and I'm like, they're like, were you jacking up? No. Right? Whatever. But I was a little pissed at these two guys. One guy was named Clark and the other guy was named Andy. And I'm like, a little pissed off, these fucking dudes. So, whatever. Then Shingo gets a boil on his face. It's like this big fucking boil. And I'm like, is that contagious? I mean, fuck. Now the dude's got a big boil on his face. And I'm in the minority. I'm long duck dong in the minority dorm. These guys almost bust me for jacking up.
He's away from his country. He's away from his culture, and he gets a boil.
Yeah, I know. It was terrible. So now I come back to my room one day, and it's locked. And it's not only locked, when I put the key in, there are people against the other side of the door, pushing against it. And there's a towel under the door. And I'm like, what the fuck is going on in here? And I can smell the weed smoke. Now, I've never smoked weed because in my mind, people who smoke weed are bad people. And people who smoke cigarettes are kind of, I didn't love them either. But people who smoke weed are definitely bad people. Now, this is a one strike, you're out school. You get caught with weed, beer, you're out. You're gone. So I'm like, huh. And then I go down the hall and I'm kind of hanging out there waiting. Eventually these guys come out. It's Andy, it's Clark, it's Shingo, right? And they've smoked weed in the thing. Two of these guys are my masturbation catching enemies. One of them has a boil. And I'm like, okay. One strike. I mean, and then, they tell you, they're like, if you see somebody drinking or smoking weed, it's your duty to tell us because you're going to be busted too, rolled up just like them. RICO charges, the whole fucking thing. And I'm like, well, so I go to the prefect, a guy named Willie Wong. And he's the senior. And I'm like, William, I got to tell you, I'm really worried about getting kicked out of school leader. I mean, these are the three guys who were smoking weed in my room, and I don't want to get caught. I mean, I just think maybe we got to just pull the fucking Band-Aid off, and you got to tell the school. And I'm like, okay, Willie's going to do my dirty work, and Willie's like, okay, interesting, okay, got it, thank you, that's good to know, thank you. So then Willie doesn't do a goddamn thing. And I'm like,
but wait, you went and ratted on those guys because you felt they were picking on you.
well,
I mean, in some way, that was your motivation for going.
It wasn't that they were
to narc on.
It wasn't that they were picking on me. It was that I wanted rid of my Japanese roommate.
Okay.
I was, I guess we might call it xenophobic. Not afraid of the Japanese. I just, I just wanted a normal high school experience. So, whatever. I wasn't right, but that's how I felt.
Yeah, I mean, God, but in theory, isn't that that really the minority dorm thing backfires? Because you turned against each other.
And the other two guys, one of them was half Chinese, half white, and the other guy was Greek. And these guys, all they did was bust me jacking off. That's all they did. But it pissed me off. Now, Willie Wong, he sits on the fucking crime. He doesn't do a goddamn thing. And now a day or two has passed, and I'm like, what the fuck is going on here? And so I'm like, oh boy, I'm about to get kicked out of school if I don't do this. So I go to the vice principal and I tell him. And he goes, okay, thank you. And so what happens next is that I walk by that vice principal's office about an hour later, and he had these big windows, and the shades have been pulled down. And there's a crowd outside. When the shades go down, somebody's inside getting kicked out. That's what happens. Now, there's a crowd outside, and I'm walking by. I'm like, someone's like, they like the shades down. I'm like, who's in there? And they're like, Clark, blank, Andy, and Shingo Suzuki. And I'm like, for what? Now I'm acting. They're like, I heard they got fucking busted smoking weed. I'm like, really? What? That's interesting. And they're kicked out. Like, they're all kicked out of school.
Jeez,
I know. Believe me, I know. And I'm like,
what are you doing?
I did it. I don't know. I mean, it's fucking terrible. So then I'm like, now the rumors are spread that I did it. And I'm like, I didn't fucking do it. Of course I didn't fucking do it. I'm not a narc. But everybody knows I did it. Everybody knows I did it, right? And at the end of the school year, I said Shingo didn't have a brother. He did. His name is Matsu. The older brother Matsu is a senior, okay? And he is about to graduate. And Andy's brother is also a senior, also about to graduate, right? And there's a school dance, and the word is spread that these two dudes are going to kick my freshman ass, right? Now, Andy's brother is bigger. Matsu's brother is bigger, and according to legend, knows karate, right? Which is fucking bullshit. Who knows? Maybe, maybe not. But now everyone's like, you're going to get your ass kicked at the fucking school dance or whatever, on the thing. And I'm like, oh, man. And my sister has graduated the year before. And she she calls me on the payphone. She goes, what the fuck is going on? And I'm like, what do you mean? She goes, I hear you're about to get your ass kicked tonight. And I'm like, what? She goes,
wow.
She goes, okay, forget it. Don't worry about it. I'll take care of it. And I'm like, okay. And so now at the dance, these two offensive linemen from the football team, two large black dudes, the biggest guys at school, are winging me the whole fucking dance. I'm out there dancing, and they're like, they're there. And like, these guys who are going to kick my ass are there too. And there's just all this like macho fucking shit, like our people talking shit. And suddenly the vice principal comes and goes, you, my office now. Now all four of us are in his office, and my protectors and these two guys. And he goes, you two touch this guy, and you guys are kicked out tonight. and so now I'm protected, right? And
did your sister backdoor that protection?
Oh, yeah. She took care of it.
Oh, she organized
she took care
it. Yeah.
She's like, nobody's touching this guy. So then sophomore year, I end up smoking weed for the first time and becoming a devotee to weed, and smoked it for years. I still smoke, and whatever. And then I started doing coke, and I started I'm running and I became this like really kind of a heavy. I mean, of all the people in the crowd who did coke, and I was in that crowd. Okay, and so I was like, oh, I can't believe I did what I did, but now I'm this other guy, and I became a different person. So the end of the story is basically like, I'm on a train 2 years later, and I'm going out to Barrington to, I don't know, see one of my buddies out there. And I'm on the train, and I'm walking down the thing, train's moving, and coming the other way is Shingo Suzuki, right? And he's got a fucking crew cut, right? And I'm like, oh my fucking God, right? I'm like, I'm like a heavy drug user, right? And he, like, we're coming right at each other, and he goes down on his knees, and he goes, so sorry. And I'm like, and he's touching my feet. And I'm like, dude, stand up. I said, I smoke. And he goes, no smoke. No, I said, I smoke. No smoke. And I'm like, God, you haven't learned a fucking word of English in 2 years, Shingo? And so we just walk away, and that's it. That's the fucking story. I mean,
so you set him straight and then went the other way.
That's right. Because he went to a military school.
As a result of getting him kicked out.
That's right.
I don't know how I feel. I mean, listen, weed being legal, I understand it. And I think of it as being less destructive as alcohol, which is, omnipresent everywhere. You can get drinks. It's totally normalized. And then kids start drinking. But when they legalized weed about 10 years ago when I was living in California, and I think about now that I have kids, the one thing that I knew when I was growing up is that like weed was an escalation to whatever you were doing. It felt like there was a difference between having a couple beers. Drug. Yeah. And then gateway, I never agreed with it being necessarily a gateway drug. It's like its own thing. But when you walk around Venice or you're in California, or I guess like so many other states now, and there's literally pharmacies on every corner, and it's, just part of culture and it's normalized. I think about, wouldn't just kids always just be doing that, like getting so stoned all the time? I don't know if we've fully seen the repercussions of it's like it takes away the deviance and like the dopamine hit of you doing something illegal when it's like it's legal.
Yeah.
Like it's not as cool. Like a lot of it, the coolness factor of smoking a joint and picking the seeds out of a bag when you were growing up was because it was hard to get, and then you had it and then you had to hide it. But now when you can just get 50 milligram gummies and walk around with 7 of them in your pocket, look, it's weed, but it's not cool.
Right.
Like it's like,
yeah, I mean, I think that's true. I mean, my mom always said that, we had a Thanksgiving dinner once, and she was talking about a book she read called 3 Pound Universe. The brain is 3 pounds. And she goes, when people take, she used the extended term for LSD, lysino something, dro acid, whatever, or hallucinogenic mushrooms, their brain waves are at a totally different level that is similar to those at the highest yogi meditative state. She was a meditator. And I was like, and we're all listening to her, and she goes, what do you think about that, Jay? And I'm like, well, what do I think? What would I know about that? She goes, oh, you've never done acid or mushrooms. And I'm like, what kind of Thanksgiving? What? And she goes, oh, believe me, we know you. we know what you did. And I'm like, oh. And she goes, look, I was 24 at the time. She goes, we set the line here, knowing you would just peek over the top, but we didn't want you to do heroin, right? Which I did once. But anyway, like they she's like tried to set the line here to kind of keep us down a little bit.
Yeah.
Yeah.
You have to react. You have to overcorrect the one thing that the kid does wrong so that they don't keep going.
Yeah.
Even though you might have perspective, it's not the worst thing in the world. I caught you with a bag of weed, or maybe you did mushrooms, but you just have to come down really hard on it so that they feel like that's the ceiling, to your point, that they don't keep going and they get a little boundary with it.
Yeah.
And that's my point about the legalization of it, because it's such good rebuttal for the kid to be like, what's the big deal? It's legal.
Yeah.
And they're right.
Yeah.
And it's romanticized and great. And I have no problem with it in theory, except when it comes to teaching a kid not to escalate it all the way to, pills and other stuff.
Which are truly dangerous.
Which are truly dangerous, but in can kind of fall under drugs or drugs.
Yeah.
So, and then just take them.
Yeah.
Though that stuff, though, you always sound like, back in my day, or you sound a little older, but this has been a huge shift since we were in school until now, with having kids, really. Because even, I told the story when we'd find a porn magazine and we'd all rip up the pages and share them and trade them like baseball cards in the park. You take this 2 pages for a day and then we'd come back and we'd swap. And now you just look at the internet. How do you protect against that? I mean, every image out there is out there.
Right. On their phones. And if they're anything like us, and they're looking at dirty pictures all day. Whatever, girls in bikinis and women in short shorts, whatever it is. It's like, we're monkeys, right? We're like, I'll just look at a couple short pictures. Okay, let's make it back to work. And it's like, that's what they must be doing, right? I mean, they can't stop
the wormhole,
themselves.
The difference between what would be in a penthouse or a hustler and the difference between what's on the internet is this huge difference of one click and you could see something that no human being should ever. It's like looking at the Ark in Raiders of the Lost Ark. Like, you shouldn't look into it. So the conversation I had with my now, I guess he's 13, is I said, listen, man, because I got this from another parent. You're going to be exposed to a lot of stuff. It's all out there. You can't wash your eyes. Once you see something, it's going to stick with you. So even though curiosity might spark you to go with something, once you see it, you can't wash your eyes. And it could be violence, it could be pornography, but that's the only thing that you can instill in them.
It's good advice. Like, I never watch death on the internet. I'm like, I just don't watch it. I know it might be interesting, but I'm like, I'm not going to watch it. I'm fine without.
Well, did you have that video when we were growing up? I think it was called Faces of Death.
I didn't watch it. I'm like,
and there was like volume 1, volume 2, volume 3, and it was that was dark.
Yeah, I never saw it because I'm like, I'm not really. What's the point of it for me? Like, is it going to make my life a little bit better to see death? I don't think so. I mean, it's not like I'm uptight about death. I'm just like, I've lived a good life without looking at that. And so I'm going to continue that. And in terms of like really nasty porn, I'm like, it just doesn't happen to be what turns me on. Like, it doesn't happen. Thank God it doesn't turn me on. So I don't need it to get darker and darker to come. I don't need that. Like,
do you think with the minority dorms, because I remember going to a college graduation for my cousin, and there was a whole separate graduation ceremony for, I think it was Black students on the same school. It was like one part of the campus was graduating and then the other part of the campus was graduating separately. And this was like they had their own ceremony.
In
and I'm like, this is
in addition to the main ceremony?
It was a specific ceremony that only had to do with African Americans. And I thought that defeated the whole purpose of integrating people in a learning atmosphere. Like, I didn't understand that as a way of.
Believe it or not, I was in the minority dorm freshman year at Colgate too. Like, that's no accident, right? Like,
but they were. What was the thinking behind that? You went to Lake Forest Academy, grew up outside Chicago in a world of John Hughes, and then you get to college and you're like,
I mean,
pinned.
I guess it's because, I mean, the premise is you're gonna be up here in upstate New York with a largely white population, and you're gonna feel insecure, and you're gonna be want to be around people who look like you. But I can tell you this: people who look like me were, it wasn't like it was the minority dorm is like mostly black kids, and scattered through a couple of like Asian kids and Indian, whatever. And you're like, it's not like I'm sitting in a whole Indian dorm here,
All right.
I mean, maybe you're black,
or you're not with people. You weren't with people who had your shared experience,
right? And
just by virtue of what you look like.
And so they're trying to make a safe landing spot for people who are suddenly in a group of all white preppy kids. But I was already with all these white preppy kids before I got to that school. But so be it. I understand the concept of it. It just was like I was painted with too broad a brush in my case. And I had a roommate, white guy actually. He was the biggest wheat salesman on the hill, believe it or not. So we met everybody. I mean, like everybody came in and bought weed from this guy. And I had a really funny experience, which I thought was racial, within the first few days of school at Colgate. There was a guy named Clambake, and he was another offensive lineman. And he was a freshman, and he was huge and blonde and like, just seemed, I don't know, anybody named Clambake, offensive lineman, I'm like, I'm probably not going to like. And so I end up walking by him. It's like the third day of school. And he goes like this, Hari? And I'm like, what? He goes, Hari Krishna? And I'm like, no. And he goes,
guessing.
You're not Hari Krishna? And I'm like, what the fuck, dude? And I walk by him and I'm like, it's fucking bullshit, man. That was bullshit. And the next day, I'm in the fucking room, like the common room, and we're having a little thing. Indian dude walks up to me, he goes, I'm Hari Krishna. And I'm like, motherfucker, you gotta be kidding me. And the next year, I'm in my fraternity room, smoking weed. Clambake walks in and sits down, and we're hanging out, and we're smoking weed and laughing and having a great time. And I'm like, you remember calling me Hari Krishna? He goes, I thought you were Hari Krishna. And I'm like, oh my God. And then we became friends. We're friends the rest of the time.
It was a bonding thing.
Yes.
His ignorance was a bonding
he met an
thing.
Indian dude. His name was Hari Krishna. He was being nice to me by saying hi. I was like, what the fuck? Anyway, I don't know, man. I mean, in a way, I think that the experience of like kids who are like maybe from the city or mostly in black schools or coming into a maybe a like a school like Bowdoin or Colgate, it's probably a good idea to have like a landing spot. But
yeah, I think that the diversity should be acknowledged from like a socioeconomic standpoint. Like, what were your opportunities growing up?
Yeah.
And I don't know if anymore they can be defined by your ethnic background.
Yeah,
like
I mean,
like the
country, in order to succeed at Colgate, in my opinion. You needed to be out there and at the parties and at the things, and that's what I did. But I mean, it could have held me back had I been like, yeah, I guess I am just a minority. I'll sit here in this dorm and be minority. And I'm like, I don't know, man. I just didn't. I get the heart behind it, but it was not the key to success, in my opinion.
Yeah. We were talking. I did to switch subjects. The something that's been really boiling on our text chain and other text chains with sports is I want to talk about the Bears, because we were talking about what's happening with Justin Fields, what happened to him, and how we feel about it.
Let me just say one thing before we get into this, and it's directly related to what you were talking about before, and then we'll come right back to the Bears. The internet has all sorts of dirty pictures on it and awful things, and what you said, death and sex and all that stuff. The American R-rated comedy film business is ailing, right? Like, getting people to go to theaters is become harder, and we've gotten lazy with COVID, and we kind of stopped going, and we're taking this great American business, this great American cultural domination form, this thing that we've exported, American rebellion and youth and R-rated movies, and we're tanking it. And my opinion, this is what has been bothering me, is that we got to find ways to revitalize the R-rated comedy business, or else we're going to lose it. And so in my opinion, the problem is now the R-rated, because we're looking at this and we're like, if you're 17, you can only come in if you're 17. And you're like, but these 12, 13, 14, 15, 16-year-olds are looking at stuff on this that would make a dark man blush, right? And it's over. The fucking thing is over. Like, let's...
So you think the rating is limiting the audience in the theater when it doesn't apply to stuff that they can see online at all?
Let's rate the internet and cancel these children's access to all these programs, or let's let them into these R-rated movies where they're going to see a little tit and hear somebody say fuck. Like, I think we got to, like, this is a big audience for R-rated movies. This is 14, 15, 16, 17. That's a big audience for us. We got to let them into these movies and revitalize the R-rated movie business.
But do you think it's enforced, or is that a time of the past?
Well, I mean,
if two 15-year-old kids go to buy tickets,
it is. It's enforced.
It is enforced.
It is.
They wouldn't be able to see the movie
sometimes
based on the rating.
What they do, which is what we did, is they buy a ticket to The Little Princess 5, and then they go sneak into our movie. And this happened to us all the time. And you're like, we can't.
Oh, and then the economics of the box office.
The economics don't land. And I think we just got to go, fuck it, man. I mean, why look at all this crazy shit anyway? Let's let them into these R-rated movies.
Yeah. I guess it depends on the subject matter and the movie, because a lot of times, especially the R-rated comedies, can help address a lot of issues to kids that are trying to understand them in a way that maybe sitting down with your parents and talking about isn't going to do. Yeah. They'd rather like learn about.
I'm not talking about
whatever from a.
Yeah, I'm not talking about 9-year-olds. I'm talking about 14-year-olds. Make it R rating is okay if you're 14, fine, because they have a phone.
I do think I went to see Dune 2 when I was down in Texas last week, and all the trailers before Dune 2 were huge cinematic movies that weren't part of a Marvel universe anymore.
Oh, good.
I did feel good about the movie going experience and how theaters are going to be in the future, because they were super cool movies that required going to see in a theater. But they weren't just the stuff that we've been looking at for the last decade, like some universe of Star Wars or Marvel. They were like their own original thing. I mean, Christopher Nolan doing that in his own world makes it like, oh, I got to go see that in a theater.
No doubt.
Have my seat vibrate and feel the huge picture, and you can't replicate that at home, even with a 65-inch TV and a sound bar. I think that they're gearing back towards going
yeah.
into theater. But the thing that bothers me is theaters that serve food during the movie. Like where you can order stuff to your seats. I hate those theaters because you're in there. The whole point is you're in a trance state. You're spaced out. You want to feel like you're alone watching it, which that's the magic trick when you're in those dark rooms. And then all of a sudden there's someone coming in eating like a chili dog next to you. And you're like,
well, that's unfortunately for you, because that doesn't bother me. That's the future. Like they're going to have to make it more interesting and fun for people to go to the movie theaters. And that's going to be through food. It's going to be through alcohol. If somebody can figure out smoking weed, I don't think they can do that. But, they're going to have to do that. And they're going to have to cut prices, I think. And frankly, I think they should be letting 14-year-olds in.
Yeah, I never got drinking in a movie theater, really.
No, I know,
like,
but like we're trying
to
revitalize this fucking thing, and that's what's going to happen. I've now become, kind of not dependent, but I kind of want my vodka soda now when I'm watching a movie at the Grove. They got a nice bar out front. I'm like, fuck, I'm going to get two, so I don't have to leave.
And just sip on it as you watch.
That's right.
Yeah, I think like either you get dinner before or after the movie. No, you don't need to eat your meal.
But we're talking about a business that's trying to get people back.
But yeah, no, I understand that. But the whole thing is suspension of disbelief. And when you're doing another activity, like the best part about being in a theater is you can't look down at your phone, or you don't.
Yes.
You can, but it's
immoral,
not cool. It's immoral. But if you're watching a movie at home, I mean, you're almost looking at your phone every 15 minutes.
Equally immoral.
You should just totally lose yourself. I mean, if you really want to buy into the fact that this is the last voyage on the Titanic and this guy's falling in love and the ship is going down, you should just totally be engrossed in that story.
I know. Exactly. I won't name the people in my house who look at their phones while we watch these great works of art. I won't name them.
Right. It drives me crazy.
But let's get back to Justin Fields of the Chicago Bears.
Yeah.
For those of you who are not Chicago Bears fans, we had a quarterback named Justin Fields who was, he was second in the league rushing year before last. He's like, all he did was improve. He got better at throwing and he was so dynamic and so terrifying for the team. Now, he was a great fucking football player. Now, I saw the stat after they traded him was that he only won in 3 years, which is 48 games, and he didn't play all of them, but he won 10 of them. And at the end of the day, if you're the GM, you go, well, yeah, right, because it's a tough situation. Because you're like, oh, we got the number one pick, and this guy only won 10 games. And every year he got better and better and better. I'll tell you this, Hayes, had he beaten Green Bay in that final game against Jordan Love, maybe he would have stayed. Maybe. Because Jordan Love ran all over us and then ran down to Dallas and beat the hell out of them in the playoffs. Like, you're like, we can't. You've been dating a guy who's beating you, Aaron Rodgers, giving you black eyes. Now he leaves to New York, gets injured, and now you're dating a new guy who's going to beat you. Like, we can't keep beating like this anymore. If this guy can't do it, then we need somebody else.
Right, but what did he have around him? The whole idea is that we were going to build around him. And we slapped QB1 on him. We literally gave him the number one, the number, and we bought the T-shirts and we bought the jersey, and he performed, and he was incredible. During the press conferences, he didn't blame his shitty play calling. He didn't blame the fact he had no blocking or no one to throw to. He had a lot of like intangibles that you want to see a big city, big market quarterback have.
Agreed.
And then we got this crazy kismet of 2 number one picks, and we traded one and built more people around him. Then we have that happening again. And instead of giving him Marvin Harrison, trading the number 1 pick, getting more thing, we already went out and got great receivers. The whole thing was built around him. I thought, keep building around him, because Joe Flacco can go to the Super Bowl. You don't need to have the best quarterback. It's not the most important position if you're already good.
Yeah.
Right? Like I was really looking forward to him being dynamic. And I thought of stuff with Swift in the backfield and running options, and the guy can run it or throw it. I was like, this could be the most explosive offense in the league.
With a really good defense.
With a really good defense. And now we're going to go back into, we talked about this when we had Ryan Leaf on the podcast. Like the draft, we put so much emphasis on the draft, but college football is an entirely different game than the NFL. Just because you're good in college doesn't mean you're going to be good in the NFL, especially at that position. So a guy might have intangibles in the combine, he can throw and he can do all that, but you're literally trading the experience that you put in for Justin Fields, who's not, I felt, knocking on the door and could really be great. We didn't lose those games. We weren't getting blown out.
No.
Those 10 games he won could easily have been 20, 25.
Right. But 7 of them were this year. I mean, I know the other guy won 1 or 2, but, we won 7 games this year. And in my opinion, there were 3 that we lost last second. Like, we could have been 10. We could have won 10, no problem. And then you go, well, I don't know, you won 10, and one of them was Green Bay.
Yeah.
I think psychologically Chicago couldn't handle, like, losing to Green Bay that badly. We got 2 guys going against each other, and one guy just mows us down again. We were like, can't deal with it. I can't deal with it. And I looked it up. The failure rate for first-round quarterbacks is 69%. So we have a 69% chance of failure with this new quarterback. It was going to be Caleb Williams, everybody knows. Like if you remember, old Peyton Manning went 2-14 in his rookie year. Like, we got to be ready to go 2-14
to rebuild again. That's where we should set our expectations.
We have all these great players, and then we got this rookie quarterback who's gonna, what's gonna win? Who's gonna win 4 or 5 games? I mean, everyone's like, "Hey, what about C.J. Stroud?" You're like, "That's 1 in maybe 10,000 that takes you to the playoffs in first year."
Yeah,
I mean, is that who else has done that?
Or Brock Purdy, who wasn't a high draft pick, but was just a great game manager. Incredible. Yeah. So, what are you buying? You're trading away the future to get the number 1 guy who's unproven. And I don't know, does he even want to come to Chicago, or is this just all kerfuffle? Because I don't like the stories that he doesn't want to come.
He says he wants to come. He's coming. He's coming. At the end of the day, this is about, as if you study football, it's about the rookie contract, and we were going to have to pay Justin Fields $25 million a year as a 10-win quarterback, and they were like, instead they're going to pay this rookie much less and let him prove himself, and they'll build around him and they'll make him hand off a lot, and I don't fucking know. I mean, I'm with you. I know you seem heartbroken. You wrote a little love letter to Justin Fields on social media.
People thought he passed away because I put the picture in black and white and I played some music under it and I thanked him for his class and the way he came into the city, and he so willingly accepted his fate by saying, "Hey, listen, I'd love to play here, but if it doesn't work out, I'll go somewhere else." I was like, that guy was a class act. But people who don't follow football or know my allegiance to the Bears were like, "I'm so sorry to hear about the loss of your friend."
Well, I think, in Pittsburgh, I think that guy's going to take somebody to the playoffs. Now, he's on a 1-year deal in Pittsburgh, so could be anybody. Could be Pittsburgh. But I think he's going to end up in the playoffs. I think, now granted, what's his name? Russell Wilson's the quarterback. but he's an old timer. Like, I mean, you know, he's great. Russell Wilson he played pretty great last year. So I think, you know, we'll see what happens. But I mean, I think that guy's going to be used a lot. But I have a feeling he's going to take somebody into the playoffs, and Chicago's going to go. Hopefully, our guy works out.
Or he's just going to be. Yeah, we'll see. I was in Chicago 2 weeks ago. I walked by that stadium, and it's so wonky. It's so weird. You know, it's like a World War I memorial, Soldier Field, which is beautiful, and it's protected under architectural historic stuff, and which is cool. But then they put this big bowl on top of it. So what are we doing? Just wipe it.
Well, they had to keep it for the protection of historic.
Yeah, but they didn't make it. It was such a weird compromise. It's like now not a great stadium.
I was in Chicago when they built that inner thing, and the Chicago Tribune said they did a review of the architecture, and they said it looks like a fat man taking off his pants. That was a review of the new thing. I was like, what? I never quite saw that, but I thought it was like a classically funny Chicago thing to say. And let me just say this: if the Bears play in a dome, I don't know, man. I might start rooting for Green Bay. I mean,
feel the same way.
Like we've been raised on bear weather. Like when it's cold, when it's 15 below, Dan Hampton didn't wear long sleeves. That is who we are. You can't put us in a damn dome and be like, well, we want the Super Bowl.
I hope they don't.
And you're like,
that's all it is. It's just a grab to get the Super Bowl.
Bullshit.
Because you have to have the Super Bowl and it don't, or do you? I guess.
No.
I mean, February, it's pretty freezing, but why do you have to have the Super Bowl and it don't?
Well, I went to, you go to 2006 Super Bowl with Rex Grossman, Miami?
Yeah, down in Miami. Yeah.
Poured rain as hard as it could rain, starting before the game and went through the whole fucking game. And so what? So what?
That game was, I was down there with a bunch of Chicago friends, and Hester returned the opening kickoff, and it was like to the moon, and then the rest of it was just miserable.
Well, I mean, we were down 5 with 11 minutes to go. Like, we were in the hunt. But yeah, it was close. But Rex Grossman's hands were too small for that kind of rain. And he was throwing passes that were like in the 20, 25 range, and Peyton was throwing passes in the like 10 to 15 range. And he has bigger hands as well. And Rex Grossman let one fly, and then that was what do you do?
I was being in Miami with a bunch of people who were down there to like watch the Super Bowl, and then we didn't even go out that night.
No.
We just thought
it was exhausting. Did you watch Prince at the halftime show?
That was pretty cool.
I stayed underneath near a heater and just missed Prince, who I fucking love. But I'm like, that's too cold. I mean, I'm freezing. Now, I still don't like a dome.
I don't like it, no. But the rain and his Purple Rain performance in the rain.
Yeah. I've seen it. I've seen it many times.
Maybe that's why.
Many times. Okay. I mean, should we vouch?
Yeah, I've you know how you get ads on Instagram, and they're somehow oddly targeted.
Yeah,
and I get a little mad at targeting ads, but every now and then I'm like, this is something I want to try.
Yeah.
So I love having coffee in the morning, but the Yeti cups are so big that I just shouldn't be consuming 16 ounces of coffee.
Right.
But I like something to sip on because you're getting ready, and the little bit of coffee that I would want to drink before I just absolutely blow my stomach out. The 16 ounces has got me, if I'm out of the house, I've got to know where the bathrooms are all the time. So I don't need to drink that much coffee, but I like the taste of coffee. So I got one of these ads for this stuff. Have you heard of Mud Water?
No.
It's this powder mix that has like, it's got cinnamon, turmeric, like lion's mane.
Oh,
a bunch of kind of stuff.
All the stuff that's good for your brain.
All the stuff that's good for your brain. And if you mix it in coffee and then put, 8 ounces of boiling water in it, you can maintain like a good flavor because this has it. So I love this mud water stuff. And I feel better after it, and I don't get jittery like I do when I drink a big coffee.
Can I see the container?
Yeah. And you do it on a subscription. So it's kind of annoying, but then it does, if you want to make it part of your morning stuff, they send it to you every couple months. No, I think once a month. And sometimes you get backed up and you have too many. So it's not exactly tied to your consumption of it. But it's nice to just have come in the mail and not have to think about.
And you can't pause it?
I haven't tried that.
Okay.
I don't know.
Okay.
But I put this, and then I put peptides in the coffee too.
What are peptides
instead of just having a regular cup, like joints and blood vessels and stuff, they dissolve in there. So I just make the morning a little bit of a...
and we've had these conversations about Aaron Rodgers and vaccines before. Is this your own medical treatment regime, or did you talk to somebody, or like, I mean, I'm curious about peptides. Like the other stuff I've actually read about, turmeric and cinnamon and all that, lion's mane.
Lion's mane.
But and I would be doing the same thing, which is like internet doctoring myself. But are peptides something you learned about, or you're like, I'm gonna throw some peptides in there?
Yeah, because I wouldn't normally have them unless I did like a smoothie. But sometimes making a smoothie in the morning is a lot of
sugar.
It's a lot of work to do when you're getting out the door. So I just throw whatever I can into my coffee now. So I make my coffee like a super drink in the morning. And this stuff, mud water, has a lot of the ingredients already.
And you heard peptides were good for your joints and all that stuff.
Yeah. And you feel good. Like I just do it based on how I feel after I take something.
Funny, every time we talk about
the flavor in this is a mushroom blend.
Okay. Every time we talk about a health thing, I say this same thing, which is like, I swear this podcast wasn't going to be about moving supplements. And here we are moving supplements. And I'm like,
we're at the supplement.
What are you gonna do?
We're just at that phase.
We got a fucking Joe Rogan's doing it. We're moving supplements, damn it.
You got there.
All right, mud slide. No, it's not called mud slide.
Mud water.
Mud water. Okay, great. I'm gonna vouch. By the way, sign up for Vouch Bolt. Follow me. I'll follow you back. You can find out the things I love. And Hayes loves. So I'm gonna vouch. It's an app, by the way. I'm going to vouch for this show on Netflix, and it's called The Gentleman. And it's Guy Ritchie show. He created, it's based on the movie he made called The Gentleman. And the premise, and I haven't seen the movie, but the premise of the television show is that there's a wealthy British aristocrat in the English countryside. His father dies, and instead of leaving his estate to the older brother, he leaves it to the younger brother because the older brother's kind of a fuck up. And the younger brother comes to realize that there is a weed growing operation on his land being run by British underground criminals, and they don't want to leave, and he can't quite get them off. And there's a hot babe who represents the wheat growers. She's like a Cockney hot fox. And the two of them are dealing with all this criminal action within, like, as though it's like the crown or something, because they're in these huge estates, and they call him your lordship. But he's like just trying to get out of this trouble. Anyway, good show.
It's one of those rare examples of a TV series being as good or better than the movie it's based on.
Yeah, I saw the trailer for the movie, and I'm like, I'm not sold. I'm 7 into this TV series, and I'm like, I don't know about the premise, but it's the same premise, got to be, right? But I don't know. I mean, I like Guy Ritchie, in particular, the way he tells quick stories with filmic cuts is like it's his own. It's like his. The great example was on, I believe, Lock, Stock, and Two Smoking Barrels. I think that's the movie, but whatever. The guy's like in New York, and he goes, "We gotta go to London," and you see right from there, you see a jumbo jet going, and then you see the table of in whatever in first class, and a whiskey is put down, and he goes, and boom, the empty glass is put down. Then the next shot is a passport stamp, and then boom, the guy's in London, and you're like, that's cool.
That's
cool.
A cool transition.
Yeah, that's cool.
Yeah, and also the clothes and the style.
Yeah,
he does have his own
talent. Big talent. And I guess he married Madonna.
He was married to Madonna.
Anyway, I think I don't know. You got anything else to say? That might be the end of this episode of Mustache Tales.
Yeah, I'll just end it with a question because it came up. I don't know what to make of it. But if you and I were hanging out and I put on a P. Diddy song, would you be like, hey, turn that off? I can't listen to it anymore.
Well, okay. Let me ask you this. What's the crime he's accused of?
See, this is what I'm so confused about. I don't know. But the raid on 2 houses at the same time makes me think that they've got something. Like, they don't just do that.
Right.
Unless something. But also innocent until proven guilty. But wow, do they put a lot of effort into getting whatever they need to get on this guy.
Okay. P. Diddy's the wrong guy to ask me about because I can't.
Michael Jackson.
I'm just really anti-child Molo, right? Like it's kind of a red line for me. And so
you call him Molo.
Just trying to have a little fun. So my view about Michael Jackson is I won't put him on, but if I will often find myself in the lobby of some corporation toe tapping to fucking Billie Jean. I admit it. I mean, and he catches you before you even know it's happening, and you're like, hey, this one's not on me. When Chris Brown beat Rihanna, my children were in the Chris Brown thing, and right. My wife and I were like, babe, guys, we don't listen to Chris Brown because officially we're against men beating women. That's how I framed it. And so we stopped listening to Chris Brown. But then a friend of mine was in the car when that happened, and he took control of the radio and he put on Jackson Brown. And my wife is like, and then he looks at her and she's like, fucking ruining Jackson Brown. How dare you ruin my handsome Jackson Brown? And like, running on empty, run. I still listen to Jackson Brown, even though he gave Daryl Hannah a couple of black eyes. I listen to Jackson Brown pretty much every day, and I don't know what to say. Like, am I okay with it? Because I'm just I don't know. I don't know what to tell you.
I was in a record store. I was in a record store with my son last week, which was so fun to do, to have them go through the catalog of music. I'm listening to music, and the way I do a record store now is I put my ear pods in on Spotify or one of the music apps, and I look at the album that I'm going to buy, and I get to hear the songs, especially if it's like an artist that I don't know. And I was buying a bunch of like records that were I guess like street hip hop stuff that was like in New York, like the stuff that didn't get popular, but it was like underground, like early Biggie sounds. And my son came up with a Kanye West album, and I go, you got to put that back. Well, I'm not buying a Kanye West album. He's like, why? He doesn't know all the surrounding controversy of anti-Semitism and general craziness that comes with Kanye. But I'm like, you have to have. So then that opened up a whole can of worms at that conversation. I'm like, we can't put money into this guy anymore.
Yeah.
And he's like, but look at the album cover. Look at the song. And I'm like, I know, but we got to make choices based on other things. I gotta say,
Hayes, I'm a little surprised that this is your opinion. And I was ready to sort of argue the opposite opinion against you. And here you are generally on the same side of this coin. Because look, Kanye West is mentally unstable, right? Like, you don't get to the peak of show business that way and then go anti-Semite. Like, nobody in their right mind, even if they felt that way, would ever do that. Like, I guarantee you'll never hear me doing that. Because of I happen to morally, I don't agree with it, but also because I'm I'm a businessman, and it would be so stupid to fucking ruin everything. So you could look at Kanye, you're like,
Yeah.
the dude is not there. He's not there, and that doesn't excuse his anti-Semitism, but it colors it in a different way. It makes you go, we're getting mad at a mentally ill guy who, by the way, has some great fucking beats. I mean, when this dude play, you're like, Jesus Christ, Kanye is a visionary musical creator who I have shut out completely because of the anti-Semitism. So, I mean, it's complicated, but I just don't. No, sorry, you're out.
You can't.
But
you're out.
But let me just say this, right? So I was talking to a Jewish guy, a friend of mine, and he made a comment about Henry Ford being an anti-Semite, and I was like, well, I said, come on, look, let me just tell you something. If you go back to the slave, going back to Jefferson. I read a biography of Jefferson, and you go back to all these dudes owned slaves because they were the rich guys, and everybody owned slaves, and then Jefferson slipped. We hold these truths to be self-evident that all men are created equal into the Constitution. He couldn't get slavery undone, but he slipped it in there knowing it was a time bomb going to go off. It went off. You got to look at the time they're in, and and then you talk about George Washington, how he and his wife chased down a runaway slave, and I'm like, I still appreciate the guy for founding the country. All right, so I was saying to him, Henry Ford, he was just a creature of his time. And the guy's like, he was pretty bad anti-Semite. I'm like, I know. I probably was, but no more than anybody else. Now, what happens then? And I wish I could remember what this guy's name was. I can't even remember my friends who I was talking to. But I read this book by Rachel Maddow, prequel, okay? An American Fight Against Fascism. I was gonna vouch for this book, but I haven't finished yet. But in it, they talk about Henry Ford and what a virulent anti-Semite he was. He was just frothing anti-Semite. He was going to run for president on this thing. And he, in fact, wrote a book, or he wrote all these letters or whatever it was. Hitler saw the writing and then wrote Mein Kampf using some of Henry Ford's ideas. And I was like, man, I owe this Jewish friend of mine an apology, and I can't remember who it is.
Dude, I didn't know.
I know. Hitler was like, oh, these are some pretty good ideas. Let's go Mein Kampf on it. And that, you go, well, yeah, okay, that guy. That guy. And now what, should I not get a Ford? I don't know. I mean, I rent them every now and then.
That's really been swept under the rug. All I see is F-150s, F-250s.
Right. But the family must not be that way. The current Ford family.
No. And I do think, to your point, there is a difference of ignorance a couple hundred years ago or however long, not that it's excusable, versus where you should be at now.
Yeah,
and the
modern day
anti-Semitism
is disgusting to me. Disgusting. But I mean, think of all the people we know who are, it's just I can't, we have so many friends. By the way, it's just disgusting. Back then, there was a little more fight between religions, and still disgusting.
I was so blind to, I thought it went away.
Yeah.
And now I have friends on social media who are getting attacked. And I'm like, whoa, this is really reared its head again.
Yeah.
In the strangest of ways.
It's so strange. And what's even more strange to me is you've got a guy like Stephen Miller, whose grandparents were Russian Jews, escaped Russia because they were going to be executed in the pogroms there, comes to Santa Monica, have children, and then they spit out this little worm, Stephen Miller, who ends up becoming the brains behind putting all the immigrants into concentration camps if Trump wins again. I'm like, you little worm. I mean, it's a confusing time.
yeah, it just always goes back to that. You just can't forget. People forget stuff easily.
Yeah,
they forget the history of things.
And that's why this Henry Ford thing, I was like, I'll never defend that dude again. You got to read this book. It's a good book. It's a good book. Well, Rachel Maddow, I'm a fan. I really am. I mean, I know people say, well, she's really a frothing liberal, but as a novelist or as a writer of books, she's just smart as fuck.
Golly, did she get me hook, line, and sinker on that Russia thing that she was essentially telling a soap opera on for a year.
I remember we've talked about this.
And I was like, wait, you can't do that. Like, you have to have some type of journalistic integrity that you're tied to. You can't sell a narrative like that. And then if it doesn't come true, be like, oh, never mind. Forget it.
Look, we have a slightly different opinion on this because there were something like 7 people indicted and convicted on this Russian thing. Like, the Russians officially did attempt to affect the election. And there were 7 Americans who were not all Americans. They were arrested, indicted, convicted. So it sounded like there was nothing to it.
Yeah, but all these talking heads are doing is selling soap. I mean, they're creating narratives on different sides, and they're unfolding. And every day, the other shoe's going to drop, the other shoe's going to drop, and then
story time.
It doesn't happen. It's story time. It's literally like scripted
that said,
story time.
We don't need the Russians in our fucking elections. And I want to ask you this. Who'd you root for in Rocky IV?
Oh, I mean, Rocky Balboa
against Ivan Drago. And if you who do you think Trump rooted for? I guarantee it's Ivan Drago. I guarantee it's Ivan Drago.
Oh, you think? Oh, dude, good catching up with you, man.
I enjoyed it. I'll see you next week.
All right, thanks, guys. Later.
Mustache Tales.